I've now got to watch my P's and Q's, have I?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hello, everyone. I'm Carvia Anderson Tuppenall from Madison HR, and I'm joined today by Graeme Bowerbank, Head of Rugby Operations at Harlequins. Did I get that right? That's
Yeah, no, that's perfect.
right
Yeah, yeah,
person.
that's me, I
Brilliant.
believe.
Yeah, brilliant. So yeah, thanks for taking the time to talk to me. I know it's half term and the sun's shining, so really appreciate it. The reason I wanted to have this chat with you is really thinking about this lockdown again. I've been talking to friends, I've been talking to family, clients, and there's a general feeling that this one's been a bit tougher. I don't know if it's the darker nights, you wake up when it's dark, you go to sleep when it's dark, and then you've got the bad weather, so you can't really go out as much. So I think people are generally finding it tougher, and we're coming up to a year of it. It's coming a year in March, so really thinking about if anyone's going to know about motivation, keeping going, keep yourself thinking about your mental health, your resilience. I thought sports professionals. So yeah, I thought it'd be a good chance to reach out to you and ask you a few questions that I've got prepared. Um,
Yeah. Oh,
yeah, can I
I'll let
first
you
of all?
carry on.
Oh, sorry. Can I first of all ask you what your role is at Harlequins and what you do?
Yeah, no, it's a glamorous title, but I tend to run around after quite a lot of people, which is always good fun. We got 60 players in the squad, and anywhere from between 25 and 40 staff. So there's full-time staff, but there's also part-time staff and consultants. So yeah, we're effectively putting them all in a position where they can operate and do their jobs. Yeah,
And
so
get them
it's called,
organised.
yeah,
Yeah.
something like that. I tend to run around with a brush up my bum a lot of the time, without. Yeah, it's
Go,
good
go.
fun, but there's plenty going on.
And how long have you been doing? How long have you been in the role?
Just over 10 years now.
Oh, wow.
So
Okay.
I worked in football before, and then yeah, football tends to have a lot of travel involved in it. I was in international football as well, so
Wow. Okay.
I got married and had a child, and then there was another one on the way, and probably a fairly significant choice to make, which I probably made the right one, I think.
Oh, good. Good to know. I guess, yeah, from your point of view, what's the most inspirational, motivating bit of advice that someone's given you?
Do you know what? I like to keep things simple. Be yourself.
Mhm.
I think it must be that I have done it, and so that's probably why it inspired me so much. Is that it's exhausting trying to be something that you think other people want you to be. And a sporting environment, it finds you out really, really quick. Because it's everything's demanding results now. Rather than you within a business environment, which I've worked in as well, you can almost kind of get away with it a little bit. You can kind of push it out there and pretend you're something, whereas you are 100% on it all the time within a sporting environment where it's week after week after week, it's results. And whilst those results I'm not made accountable for, I'm responsible for, you're with people who are being made accountable for it, and so ultimately they're relying on you to make sure, almost to a certain extent, keeping them honest,
Yeah.
keeping like a group of 60 players and staff honest with themselves and with each other. Yeah, just be yourself, because it's so hard trying to be something else.
You're going to get found out, and like you say, it is exhausting. Yeah.
Mm.
A lesson I've learned too. Thank you. So I'm going to just crack on with these questions that I've got.
Yeah, go for
Yeah.
it. Yeah, yeah.
Okay. So yeah, how do you build resilience within the professional sporting environment?
Do you know what? Resilience is an amazing thing, because it gets talked about a lot, and I'm not sure. I think it's something that everybody has an opinion on, and yet probably nobody's quite sure what it means. But I think resilience is about, firstly, knowing yourself, and then secondly, and probably the most important thing that we're talking a lot about in our environment at the moment, is actually knowing someone else. And so if you can build resilience in your relationships, you tend to be able to build resilience across a lot of the things that you're doing.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's really, really important that, especially during a lockdown period where you're probably not seeing people face to face, is actually pick up the phone or get on something where you can actually see people's eyes,
Mm-hmm.
because you then find out where they're at. And, it doesn't, resilience isn't a word, I don't think, that makes people tough. It's associated with this sort of toughness of, I can deal with this, Whereas the whole mental health thing that people are talking about nowadays it's actually about how courageous can you be, how brave can you be to actually open your mouth and say, do you know what, actually I'm not all right. Can somebody help me build this resilience, if that's what you want to call it? Because it's not a skill that you're just born with. I mean, look, some people just happen to have been brought up in an environment where a tougher skin is probably needed. That doesn't mean it's right. But I think, as I say, the resilience that we build within our group is actually a resilience with each other. And that collective resilience, regardless of what environment you're in or what business you're in, actually, when you're scrapping together rather than feeling like you're individually doing it or you're on your own doing it, well, that in itself is a resilience. And so to have people in your corner, if you want to call it that. I mean, it's so easy for us in sport to do it, especially rugby being such a physical game. But it doesn't matter what game it is or what you're going into. If you're going in it together, it's team. We call it going to war every week because we do. I don't do it, but the players, they go out there and they they fight hard with each other, and it's very physical. But actually, the resilience is built with the ability to trust the person who stood one side of you and the other side of you in a defensive line on a rugby field, and that person knows what you need from them. And likewise, in a business scenario, whether you're going into a meeting, internally or externally, if you know that person and they know you, it's a great feeling to know that they're in your corner. Yeah. And I think that's resilience in a team way. That's how I see it, and I think that can translate into anything because it's such a simple principle. If you're not prepared to get involved with you look, we've got a load of people within our environment, and look, I don't see it as pressure, I see it as privilege. But a lot of people look from the outside and think, God, those guys, they must be under loads of pressure. Yeah, I mean, there are people who are under a bit of pressure, but let's not sort of over egg it. But actually, not everybody likes each other because it would be impossible. But you've still got to be in the corner of your teammate. And as I say, that for me is a real resilience in numbers.
Thank you. And actually, that leads nicely into my next question. I know you're saying that it's not always pressure as such, but I guess pressure can impact on different people in different ways. So how do you sort of check in with the players, because each of them will be responding to pressure or a little bit of stress differently?
Yeah, exactly. Again, I mean, the thing is it's amazing. I mean, there's obviously a lockdown going on at the moment, if you want to call it that. I mean, we're in all the time, and we're in each other. We're in with each other regularly. But I think the big thing for us is that there's pressures from the outside as well. And again, we're in this sort of what's perceived as a macho environment. But I think when you get to know people, you allow them to be vulnerable with you. And so that point is where, every day when we come in, and we can kind of laugh about it now a little bit, but, when you say to somebody, you're right, and you get a nod and yeah, I'm all right. And everybody just goes and sits at their desk. We've almost put a little bit of pressure on each other to push each other a bit harder than that. So there are support bubbles that are around at the moment, and we're able to do it because all of us are tested, and ultimately everybody else in theory shouldn't be meeting anybody else. So yeah, even a happy player is the player's happy when wife and child at home are happy as well. And the moment that they're feeling under pressure when they go home, because either their wife or their children aren't happy with what's going on, if you've got to know that person, you know what pushes their buttons and you know their little triggers, you can soon get in behind that. And we've got a guy here who sort of, I say, he specializes in it. It's his job. He's just in and around the players all of the time, just probing, just finding out, and actually probably asking questions of somebody's best friend as opposed to the person themselves.
Yeah.
And again, that's just it is a pressure thing because, we've got, and all businesses will have, we've got people who are here from all over the world. You put a player who's a world-class player in a position where is here with his wife, and he's probably only been here for 6 months, and all they've ever known is lockdown, and have potentially come with one child, and there's probably another child on the way, which we have got that scenario right now.
Oh, wow.
Then there's
Okay.
going to be significant pressures involved, and it's just them knowing that you're there.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they're not on their own. You know, she's probably going to have baby over here, and you know, her mum and dad aren't there, and his mum and dad aren't there, and you know, she's having to look after another 18-month-old at home with another one on the way, and no support systems in place. So, you know, those pressures, dealing with them, it's about just putting the little support systems in place, that they know that the next 6 months isn't going to be a huge struggle whilst they bring, you know, another child into the world. And for us, that's the pressure. The pressure isn't going out on a Saturday afternoon and performing. As I say, that should be a privilege. But all it does is that when there's other things going on in your mind, it's taking all of those things away, and making sure that they're able to perform. But again, going back to your first question in terms of talking about resilience, that is a resilience, but at the same time, you know, it's not necessarily resilience about their job. It's about looking after them as a whole person, rather than just going, well, you're here and you're being paid to do a job, get on with it. Well, no, there's other things that are affecting that, and it's understanding people's lifestyles and you know how they operate as an individual. And once you get to that point, you start dealing with pressure because you're adding resilience in without even thinking about the word.
Yeah. No, I think that's really important what you're saying. It's those regular check-ins, just even whether it's with a person or their best mate, just to see how are they doing, and knowing that they can come and talk to you without any sort of judgment or feeling that you're not going to listen. So that's all. Yeah, that I feel for the person who can't have the family around when a new baby's on the way as well. That's
yeah.
I guess what I'd be interested to know is so you've got senior players within the Harlequins team, and they're talking openly about mental health. So how are they helping the younger players, the ones that are starting off in their careers, and sort of coaching them through that?
We don't have a mentoring system as such, but when the young guys come into our system, there are obviously position specific, you know, ideals and easy matchups. You know, whether it's nationalities or cultures, but also position specific. You know, you've automatically got something that you can start talking about. But it's really, really important, I think, that you know the young guys, I suppose historically, you know, rugby has always had that macho image, and so therefore you come into it from a schooling point of view, and you come into a professional environment. There are a number of things that are expected of you, whereas we're kind of trying to get over what that expectation is. And it goes back to probably the first thing I said is, please come in and just be yourself. And actually to be able to create an environment that allows people to be themselves. I mean, genuinely, Kav, I mean, and none of them would thank me for saying this, but they'll be able to laugh. We got some proper weirdos in this place. Like you have to have a certain mentality to play certain positions, and so those guys, you know, tend to live a little bit of that, you know, in their external lives as well. And I think when they come in and you start to get to know people, and you know, you sit and have a laugh and go, you're not quite the same as everyone else, are you? And you can have a good chat with them, but it's all in fun and banter within what we create. But again, it's, for me, it's just about allowing those people to be themselves when they come in.
Yeah.
And look, again, rugby's changing in terms of its demographic in regards, you know, it used to be very, very public school dominated. And so what you tended to find was that you'd get people, you know, who were probably very, very well balanced. You know, they've been well brought up. There's been quite a lot of, you know, money floating around, you know, within their upbringing. So they've had a very, very good, solid education. And so the person that came in, they probably have never needed to be as open, because it's all just been put there on a plate for them. And yet all of a sudden somebody's asking them for something Whereas now there's a you know, there's a bigger balance of people coming in, a bigger set of cultures. People tend to talk to each other and they learn quicker from each other, whereas they never were given that learning opportunity probably for the whole of their upbringing, and found actually that people do struggle. Whereas they're into academies now at 13, 14 years old, and coming across people who are very, very different. And we're starting to introduce those conversations. I mean, we call them, we just have little coffee mornings. And it sounds, you know, it sounds almost like the you know, an old ladies club, which is absolutely brilliant. But they just go in, have coffee, cake, and we even put topic cards on the tables. So it's not just talking about rugby. We'll put something in there that's, you know, that's topical. You know, it could be about war. You know, there's a war going on in, you know, wherever. You know, what do you think of that? And okay, every now and again, you can hear a few raised voices from tables, but actually they're getting to know each other. They're understanding their value systems, their belief systems, accepting each other. And the moment that you feel accepted, even if you've got a different opinion to everybody else, that acceptance brings that belief that you can be vulnerable with people. Then you start opening up and you start getting to know the real person.
Yeah. No, thank you. So just out of interest, so I might be answering my own question here, but so the physical aspect of being a rugby player at that level, does that help with the mental health, the physical activity? Does it boost their mood, or have I answered my own question?
No, I don't think you have actually, because it's interesting because if you're not careful and you don't change the environment, and you almost change the day up every now and again, and spring surprises in, you know, that monotony like you get with every job. You know, they're fortunate. They come in to do a job that, one, they love, two, they're doing it with their mates, and three, like all 18 to 30-year-olds, they want to just be running around with a ball in their hands or at their feet. And so, you know, that side of it, yes, of course, you know, from a mental health point of view, it can and it should help. But, you know, we're dealing here, especially we've got a women's team now as well. But, you know, the mental health issues within those age brackets for women and men between sort of the age of 15 and 30 is what we're dealing with all of the time. And so, yeah, of course, because, you know, you're dealing with people who are so, I'm going to call it stacked. I mean, I wouldn't dare take my shirt off in front of most of them. Is that, you know, there's no level of body shaming that goes on, but at the same time, it doesn't take much to look at somebody who's across the room who you think is in better shape than you, and all of a sudden it starts affecting the way that you go about living your life. And, you know, things can escalate so quickly. And again, like you say, it's just making sure that you've got those check-in points that are going on all the time. And we have like welfare groups that meet almost every single week. And they're people who represent from different departments, and every now and again we let different people move in and out of them, so that people are just getting a feel for what that discussion looks like. Because what it does then is it rather than just having, you know, people go, oh, well, you're all right, you've got a sports psychologist or whatever. Well, one, a sports psychologist impacts on performance, and so the perception from the players would be is that person has an impact on their selection.
Mm-hmm.
And so if that person impacts on your selection, or is impacting on your performance, or may go and tell the boss something, then you're not going to open up to that person. So what we try and do is we try and open it out so that they've got as many avenues as they possibly can. And also, look, men and women bring so many different qualities to any given environment, you know, regardless of, you know, we talk about equality and everything else, 100%, that's absolutely correct. But it's about what they're bringing to that environment, and men and women just think differently. And so to allow people to actually talk to each other in a very different way and just create those safe spaces means that your environment just becomes more and more positive.
Yeah. And just based on that positive environment, so how important is culture in making sure you've got a positive environment for the players to thrive? And who drives that? who drives that culture.
Yeah, do you know what? From our point of view, things have changed quite recently for us, and that's just it's part of what goes. But I think we've been desperate to be in a position where it's not top led. It's so easy for people to go, well, that guy there's the boss, and he dictates what's what. But there's so many times where culture, environment, behaviors, all of those things kind of get molded into one, and nobody quite distinguishes what it means. But I think the important thing is that it's driven by everybody within the business, and that it's agreed. There's so many places have a lot of weird and wonderful things written on the walls. But actually, if you don't ever talk about it, that's literally what it is. It's just decor on the walls. Let's say the coffee mornings that we have, it's a big part of that for us. It's bringing different people into the environment to talk about things when we're allowed to. But it's almost a checkpoint for your own personal values and the behaviors that are accepted and they're not accepted within the group, because I think there's a misconception somewhere that everybody should be perfectly behaved all the time, and I just don't. That's just not practical. It's not possible. But I think so long as people understand that there are a set of boundaries, especially within our environment, because let's be honest, 18 to 30-year-old lads are perfectly capable of anything.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's almost, those things become unwritten. You write them there yourselves with your daily behaviors and what you talk about, but because you've created that environment where there's safety to talk, where you can feel vulnerable if you've made a mistake and talk about that, all of a sudden those things get dealt with very, very quickly because people are talking about things.
Yeah.
And look, there's some fairly honest conversations and some hard conversations sometimes, because people will do things and it's not what you stand for as a business, it's not what you stand for as a group. But if you don't talk about it, and the amount of times that you hear of, oh yeah, it'll be all right, it'll go away, it will, but it'll come back.
Probably bigger as well.
Yeah, and we're pretty good at dealing with things because it's every week, and it's no different in any other sport. Even if it's an individual sport, and you have a difficulty with a coach or one of your S&C coaches or your medical staff or whatever, because you've got a big team of people around you. If you're a global superstar like tennis player or a golfer, you still have those things, and you can't leave them hanging. Otherwise, they're going to affect your performance that given week. So as I say earlier on, that I think the easiest tendency within businesses that you sit in offices is, well, I had a spat yesterday, but if we leave it over the weekend and we'll come in and just make a cup of tea on Monday morning, if nobody says anything, it's all right. And it just goes, but that's always hanging. Like you'll always have a slight distrust of what that person either thinks of you or what they might be saying about you behind your back.
Yeah.
Whereas actually, if it's dealt with straight away and straight up front, which tends to be what we do, probably because we don't have a lot of choice, all of a sudden, the vulnerability side of it's gone.
Yeah. No, thank you. I think I love the way that you're talking about that. You just have so many channels for people to open up, the team to open up, not just the players, but everyone else in the office. This is actually my last question, because we've covered quite a few just by generally talking. But I guess, so if you have a mood drop or you're having a bit of a bad day, what do you do to kind of switch your mood or lift your mood?
Well, that's a really good question, because I think, again, I'm really lucky. I mean, I'm allowed to mention names on here, but Billy, my boss, I've known him for nearly 3 years now, and Ed and Andy, who share our office together. I don't really need that, just because they'll pick it up before I do.
Yeah, great. That's what you need.
It's a brilliant place to be. They'll know if I'm either if I'm down, or they can see that I've probably got too much on my plate, and can I take something off you, or actually, do you know what? I'll stand outside the office for an hour and make sure that no one comes in here whilst you get done what you need to get done, because I can see that that's the bit that's bothering you.
Yeah.
So we're really, really fortunate in that sense, and it's a great place to be, because I'm not sure that everybody's got that. But I mean, I think if I was to give people advice on what that is or what it might look like, it's probably, again, just I'd say I'm really, really simple person, and always go back to basics, and probably set my stall out from being quite young was that I was going to do something that I loved as opposed to earn loads of money. And I think if you can, if I got out of bed every morning and was going to do something that I loathed, I'd have a big problem, and I'm not sure how I would deal with that. But yeah, of course, you get down, but I think it's about grounding yourself quite quickly if you are feeling down.
Mm-hmm.
I'll have a little look round here, and I live out in the countryside, and I've got two great kids, and they're doing well at school, and they're healthy, and my wife's fit and healthy, and actually I go into a job that 99% of the time is absolutely fantastic. So what could conceivably be wrong? And the other thing I would say, and it's something that you can really practice, is putting things in boxes.
Mm.
Whether, and that's a mental thing that you can actually practice. So if there is something that's like, there's certain things in every single job that you do, and I tend to deal quite a lot with disciplinaries,
Mm-hmm.
whether it be on-field indiscretions or certainly things that we're doing off the field, even whether it be as a club or whether it be as individuals. And actually, they're not particularly nice conversations to be having with people. And
You're
every
talking
now
to
and again,
HR, I know.
yeah, and
Yeah.
they get to you, because actually you're looking and you're going, well, we're actually having to exact something here which is part of either regulations or laws or principles that are going on, but I'm not sure I 100% agree with what I'm actually having to sanction you for here.
Mm.
And I find that really, really hard, because I don't deal with injustice very well. But and the best thing that you can do, from my point of view, is to open your mouth and talk it over with somebody else and go, I think, again, it's just that ability to go back to basics and just ground yourself of you got to do it. That part of it's your job. Put a smile on your face and go with it. And yeah, it's not an easy one to answer, is it?
No, and I think it means something different to everyone. Everyone has got their own. It
Yeah.
is, yeah, knowing what kind of pushes you and drives you and looking at your own situation. But I like that, just putting things in boxes, and just that whole, as you've been saying right from the beginning, simplify.
Yeah.
And then it doesn't become so overwhelming when you simplify things. If you're thinking about everything all at once, yeah, it is going to throw you. But simplifying things makes it easier. Great. Was there anything else you wanted to? That was the last of my questions. Was there anything else you wanted to add, or?
No, I say, when I kind of agreed to do it, it was actually quite therapeutic looking through the questions and seeing what was what, because the last 10 months I haven't been on furlough at any point, and I know that loads of people have. And so there was a point actually during the middle of it. I've never worked so hard in my life in the last 10 months, and people may watch this and look and go, well, hey, poor you, I've been sat at home desperate to work. So it's kind of gone both ways, really, in that sense of, there are people out there who are doing loads and loads of work, and probably too much work, because the business is trying to save money, and you're doing 3 people's jobs, and leaving those other people on furlough. But what I found really, really interesting was it was just the choices that you get, during the whole of that. And I've genuinely made the effort to ring 5 people every week who I know who are on furlough, to say, look, how are you? What's going on? This is what's happening at work. This is what's going on. And sometimes people have been really, really grateful for it, and other times it's like, they probably couldn't get me off the phone quick enough. But it's been a real learning experience, I think, for everybody. But just that ability for people to spend time with their families more than anything. I mean, fathers especially, who
definitely,
especially in those early months, if you've had a lockdown baby, I mean, wow, Imagine the amount of time that you've both been able to spend, with the baby, which would never be afforded to you in any sense, would it?
Yeah, extended paternity leave. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, that's great. Thank you so much, Graeme.
Pleasure. No worries.
Let me stop recording.